My name is Robin Beavers. I've actually been a speaker at VerdExchange for a few years now, and it's one of my favorite conferences of the year. As someone who has been working on sustainability and clean energy for a long time now, you go to a lot of these things, and I think VerdExchange has a very unique aspect to it. People are very honest and real about what the real market issues are, and it's a lot less buzzwords and more talk about what we're doing to make stuff happen. So. Right now, you're at the Water Energy Nexus panel. And this is a really neat topic. I think it's actually going to tie together everything that's going to be discussed today. And California in particular, the Water Energy Nexus issue is very tangible here. So if you follow the water issues of California, you know, there have even been Hollywood films made about it. It's so thrilling, you know, and exciting and dramatic. And then on the energy side, you know, California has made a tremendous progress in advancing new renewable energy technologies from a centralized to distributed sense. You know, people have experienced outages here. You know, these topics are very top of mind for people who live here. What's so great about the water energy nexus issue is that it just shows that these are not mutually exclusive topics. You know, one of the things I've done previously is I helped put solar panels all over Google's headquarters, and, you know, we thought it was great, and it's this really, you know, easy to use system, and then we found out you actually had to wash those panels a lot to make sure they were still economically attractive to us. And now just driving around LA recently, I see all these dirty solar panels. All I think about is I want to go wash them, you know. And then, you know, or if you just think about from the water side, you know, some people don't have a lot of, you know, all of the LA citizens here are getting their water from the northern part of the state or from Nevada. So it's just such an interesting topic, and this panel here is perfect because we have very high-level people thinking and actually doing stuff to help address the water energy nexus. So today we have Marzia Zafar, who's she's Director of Planning and Policy at the California Public Utilities Commission. We also have Fran Spivey-Weber, who's been head of the Water Board for many years now and is also working close with Marzia and a few other stakeholders on a collaborative water energy team that they're going to speak about today. We also have John Downing here from Shaw, the big Shaw Group. It's one of the largest water and energy infrastructure and environmental companies in the U.S. And they're going to just be very honest about all of the issues they see and what they're doing to address these challenges for future planning. So this won't be a discussion to prove to you that the water energy, I'm going to just call it Water G from now on. The water energy nexus is an issue. That's baseline assumption for sitting in this room. They're going to talk about what we're doing about it. And then I might talk a little bit at the end about some other stuff, but go ahead, Marzia.
Can I get that little controller? Thank you, Robin. I'm Director of Policy and Planning Division for the California Public Utilities Commission. We regulate essential services, including privately owned electric, natural gas, telecommunication, water, railroad, and passenger transportation companies. The Commission regulates over 70% of California's electric sales and 99% of the state's natural gas, while only about 16% of California's water services. So we're a much smaller player on the water side as far as direct services are concerned. Policy and Planning Division, just to give you a short briefer, is one of the divisions within the Commission. My group is charged with working on emerging issues and at times finding alternatives to existing policy as we move forward. Unlike industry divisions that you've heard of, Energy Division and Water Division, Policy and Planning is not at all involved with active proceedings before the Commission. We're somewhat of an ideas shop, and sometimes some of those ideas are not exclusive to the Commission's jurisdiction. For today's panel, I'd like to discuss a recently issued white paper that my group published in mid-January, titled Rethinking the Water Energy Nexus. Fran and WetCat have done a tremendous job in this area, and the thrust of my presentation and the paper is to build on the work of WetCat and further clarify the nexus and push for building a set of guidelines similar to the energy industry's energy action plan and the water industry's best management practices in order to make the nexus more efficient. So now going into my slide presentation, slide number 2 highlights the two definitions of the nexus. A nexus simply is a connection between the systems, the water and energy. Nexus obviously includes water and energy, but what's included in the water and what's included in energy and what's in the nexus is sometimes a little fuzzy. On the water side of the nexus, there are at least two basic components: the water industry sector and the water-related end uses. The water sector includes processes that collect, convey, treat, and distribute a unit of water to end users, as well as processes used to collect and transport used water for treatment prior to safe discharge. This essentially reflects the energy used to supply and dispose of cold water to an end user. This energy is referred to as embedded energy in water. There are also energy impacts that result from the use of water in residential, commercial, and agricultural settings. These uses can also add energy to water, typically through heating of hot water or pressurization of water for other uses. This essentially reflects a demand for energy-enhanced water. And as you can see in this slide, there are two definitions of the nexus. The first one is from the California Air Resources Board, the Climate Change Scoping Memo, which defines the energy-water nexus broadly as both the embedded energy as well as the energy-enhanced water. And it concludes that 19% of electricity in California is used for water-related services. While a study done in 2010 on behalf of the California Public Utilities Commission by GEI and Navigant Consultants, they use a narrower definition for the nexus, and they're suggesting that the nexus is just the embedded energy in water. And that's 7.7% of the electricity used in California. So the first definition includes the 7.7%, but it's much broader. It also includes the end users. Going to slide number 2, this gives you a little more detail into the two studies. The first is the CEC study, and as you can see, it tells you that it includes the water sector energy in the top half and the water-driven energy demands in the bottom half. And the GEI study only has the water sector energy. So whichever definition whichever technology is included makes up that definition. And I think our paper and my presentation is suggesting that we should come up with a uniform definition, whichever it is, just to clarify for us. Going into slide number 4, the main point I want to make is that in this slide is that energy intensity is regionally based. This table charts the regional energy used in the supply and conveyance segment of the water sector. In this one corner of the nexus, as you can see, there's a high degree of energy variability. This variability is not an indicator of efficient versus inefficient systems. Rather, it is an indicator of geography and water scarcity. In the southern regions of the state, where water is more scarce, supplying water is highly energy intensive because a significant amount of water is pumped nearly 2,000 feet over the Tehachapi Mountains. In northern part of the state, where there is less reliance on long-distance conveyance or where gravity feed systems exist, energy intensity is significantly lower, as you can see, and almost negligible in comparison to the south part of the state. The other main point is that the chart does not tell you if the water sector is energy efficient or inefficient. It really shows how variable energy intensity of the California water supply is. And it also tells you that water is scarce. And then my final slide number 5, how should we balance the statewide GHG reduction goals with the water scarcity risk that is faced in many parts of the state? As we have seen, one way to manage water scarcity is with energy-intensive technologies such as pumping. As we move forward, other energy-intensive technologies have also been suggested as ways to mitigate water scarcity, desalination. But these technologies may not be aligned with the GHG reduction goals because of how intensive their need for energy is. So what should we do? There are easy wins: reduce water use through water conservation and water efficiency, but how do we pay for that? Which sector pays for that? And what's cost effective for both sectors? So far, a key challenge has been developing a model that accounts for both energy and water savings as opposed to just energy savings or just water savings. While this is an issue of the institutional legacy, there's a fundamental problem of valuing water. Quite simply, there's not a well-established process for valuing water. We also need to clearly recognize that regional access to water is a fundamental goal as well. So while certain regions may be inherently more energy intensive, they should follow best practices for that region. And the best practices in a water-rich region by nature will be different than those in the other regions. Finally, the general principle here applies. We can't change what we don't measure. And so the paper we issued recommended for coordinated water energy actions, and this is what WETCAT has also been working on. And the 4 recommendations are to assess both the value of water and the value of energy when assessing costs and benefits for new projects, reduce high energy intensity water use, define best practices of energy efficiency in the water sector, and develop state water energy data reporting rules so that water-related GHG impacts can be tracked. And just finally, going back to the beginning of my presentation, to us, when we issued this paper, we wanted to make the point that first we have to come up with an agreed-upon definition for the Nexus. Is it the 19% of electricity consumed in California, which includes embedded energy as well as energy-enhanced water, or is it the 7.7%, which is just the embedded energy? Whatever the case, whatever the definition that the industry agrees upon, then we should move forward and come up with a set of clear guidelines that aligns this nexus, similar to the energy industry's 20% reduction, 20% RPS through legislation, the GHG legislation, and on the water side, you have the 20% by 2020 reduction. You also have the best management practices through legislation, but the nexus itself doesn't have an aligned set of policies, and that's our recommendation, that we should have a uniform definition and have some overall policy guidelines either through legislation or agreed upon through an MOU for the industry to move forward. And I think that ends my presentation. Are we taking questions?
Yeah, we'll do questions at the end.
Okay.
Great. Next we'll have Franz Weber. I'm going to...
Hello? Oh, yes, that's it. I'm going to stay right here in the interest of time, and I apologize ahead of time. I will have to scoot out toward the end, the scheduled end of this session because I have a flight. So if you have more questions, Felicia knows where to find me. I'm at the Water Board, and you can email me or call me or do whatever. I'm willing to answer anything, even if I'm not here. The Water Board is one of a number of agencies that has been working together for the last several years on this water energy nexus, on trying to make things happen for water energy. But why are we doing it? I mean, what is all of this discussion about the delta and water and now energy? What is it all about? It really is about people. It's about the economy. It's about the things that all of us in this room and outside care about, and it's all very much interconnected. And when we didn't have too many people, we didn't have to worry about that interconnection. The more people we have, the more we do have to think about interconnection. When we had a simpler economy, we didn't have to worry about that interconnection. Now we do. So trying to address the interconnections, in this case, water and energy, becomes something of a management issue of behavior. Sometimes it requires learning, changing, and it's not just behavior of people, it's behavior of institutions, of agencies. It's also technology. Technology can change on a dime how we address a number of these issues, and that's I will address that just briefly in a few minutes. And then certainly policies. Policies can both enhance the ability for us to work together, and policies can also keep us apart. And trying to figure out how to get around or over or to change those policies that keep us apart is something that we're working on very, very diligently within the water energy team of the climate action team. That's what I'll be talking about today, WETCAT. It's one of the climate action team subgroups that was set up when AB 32 was adopted, and it was to come up with a scoping plan and objectives that agencies who work on water and energy could achieve together. We had 6 targets at the beginning of WETCAT. It was 3 of them you heard about in the last session: conservation, recycled water, stormwater capture and reuse. Then another one was pump efficiency, more of a technology approach, variable speed pumps, etc., and pumps that were just simply more efficient. For pumping water, for moving water, for addressing water issues. Also renewables. One of the things that we recognized when putting together these objectives is that a lot of water agencies, wastewater agencies and water supply agencies have large plants, lots of space. And they have lots of engineers who are really good at fixing things and keeping things in repair and washing those panels. And so encouraging water agencies to get into the renewable business, and where possible, encouraging them to get into the renewable business beyond meeting just their needs, but starting to meet the needs of their region. And then the 6th item on our objectives was to figure out how to pay for this. Now, the Air Board, in their wisdom, gave us one way of paying for it. That was a public goods charge. That's pretty much a non-starter during the last 5 years. So not much has been done with the public goods charge, but we did do a study on it, and what we discovered is that people are willing to consider a public goods charge if it's going to be something that actually benefits them locally, regionally. They aren't too eager in San Francisco to pay for something that's going to, benefit Southern California and vice versa. But so public goods charges aren't off the radar, but they have been joined now by some other new ideas, and I'll get into that in just a minute. So how did we do? Actually, we did very well on our 5 plus objectives. We have the 20 by 2020, which you've heard a lot about already. We have the State Board did a recycled water policy that encouraged recycled water throughout the state, particularly for agencies that were not being regulated by the public utilities, by the CPUC, Public Utilities Commission. Now the Public Utilities Commission will be wrapping up their proceeding on recycled water in the next few months. And so we will have a statewide approach to recycled water that, again, encourages its use. Stormwater, there's been a massive change in the way we look at stormwater. The Water Board has always approached stormwater from a water a non-point water quality perspective. And what we've learned and started to adapt into our policies, both regionally and in statewide policies, is the benefits that you can get for water supply if you capture stormwater close to its source, close to where it falls, and put it into something that will be useful, into cisterns, into dams, into groundwater, into places that are clean enough to serve that water again without it causing a problem from a water supply, from a water quality perspective. So meeting water supply benefits with a water quality action is something that we're moving forward on. The CPUC hasn't done so much on that, but they are incorporated into a lot of the work that we do at the Water Board, so they are covered. On the pump efficiency, there's been some work from the CEC, the California Energy Commission. The challenge there is getting those pumps into the marketplace, and this is a perfect place for you all to have that conversation as you move forward, because I think pumps are a part of water. They're certainly a huge part of energy as well, and the more we can do with pump efficiency, not just on making them more efficient, but on variable speed pumps. A lot of the problem with water supply and waste is that taking the Northern California to Southern California example, as you pump the water over the Tehachapi's and you deliver it to water agencies, and then they start to deliver it out to their customers, a lot of these are old systems and they have one speed. It's like on. And they don't turn it off, and it stresses the pipes. If you could vary the amount of pressure going through these pipes, you would have better, be able to have better maintenance of those pipes and actually not lose as much water, which has to then be replaced and becomes an expense both on the water side as well as the energy side. So doing more of that. We just, a couple of weeks ago, the LA Department of Water and Power offered to the residents in Los Angeles 17 cents a kilowatt hour to put in solar facilities on particularly big box stores, big campus type situations, not necessarily, in fact, not for residential. Maybe some of those Mulholland Drive folks could do it, and that's a very high rate. That is, I think, going to really deliver a lot of new energy. The CPUC and the agencies that they regulate aren't quite at the 17 cents threshold. I think they offer 11 cents, which is just about on the, if it went up to 13 or 14 cents, I think you'd have a lot more water agencies coming into the system. But a lot of them are there, and certainly they're covering their own needs, and they all have capacity, a lot of them have capacity to expand. So I think we're making progress there. In terms of where we're going to go, we are going to be updating the AB 32 scoping plan for the next for 2020, 2030, and 2050, and we'll be doing that this spring. And there we will be establishing stretch goals for the next 5 years that will translate into even stronger stretch goals for the next through 2050. And so for those of you who are interested in engaging in this process, it's largely a group of agencies: the State Water Board, the California Energy Commission, the CPUC, the Department of Water Resources, the Air Board, Cal EPA generally, and the Governor's Office, and then other agencies like Food and Agriculture and the Department of Public Health. And we get together once a month. We have formed a subcommittee on financing. We are trying to identify those policies that are barriers to the future, and we are working not so much to consolidate our various authorities, but to figure out who has the authorities that work the best for the given problem or for the given opportunity. And we like each other. We actually do enjoy working together. I'm the co-chair along with the CEC right now, Rob Oglesby. I will be leaving that position, and someone from the Department of Water Resources will be coming in to be co-chair, and then Rob will leave at the end of in a year, and someone from the CPUC will be coming in. So we've worked out our governance. We've got staffing in every agency now, which we didn't have. We had zero when 5 years ago. Now we have staffing. And the Water Board, I'm proud to say, has actually given to the CPUC a staff person to help them because they are very stretched in this area. So there's a lot of collaboration and cooperation, and we are very interested in working with local folks, with regional agencies, and we have brought people in to tell us what works best, and those are the things that we're trying to that we will be including in our update of the plan for AB 32. So I'll stop there, and I hope you'll have questions later.
Thank you.
I want to talk about steam electric energy and water use associated with that. One of the things that you have in any urban area is you have steam electric generating plants or combustion turbines that provide rotating VARs, that provide support to the electric system. It provides a component of reliability to your system that, although we'd all like to see renewables provide 100% of our electricity, it's probably not going to work. And as you see, some utilities that have taken down their steam electric plants, including some old coal plants in Chicago, they actually convert those plants to what they call synchronous condensers, where they actually are able to put rotating VARs back in. No matter what the supply of electricity is to that plant, they're able to do that. And you really need this in any large urban area like the Los Angeles basin. And the other issue is that it's unlikely that in an urban area like Los Angeles that you're going to actually develop new sites for major power plants that are fueled by natural gas or any other technology. People just don't want them, and it's very difficult to put them in there, but that's where they're really needed. When you go to closed cycle operation for these plants, for steam electric generating plants, you do some things that are counterintuitive to what you might really want to see. You're going to increase the amount of air emissions for every megawatt of electricity in general. This is in general. If for what plant A, if it has any one of these three types of cooling system, you're going to decrease the plant efficiency with an increase in generation cost and cost to the ratepayers. And you're going to consume a lot of space when you do that. There are basically three different types of steam electric generating cooling systems for the condenser side, for the steam turbine side. And these are once-through cooling, and California has a policy for once-through cooling where we're trying to reduce and eliminate once-through cooling for the protection of the biota in the aquatic critters. The other you have is wet cooling towers and dry cooling towers. I'll quickly go through these. Once-through cooling has the largest amount of water that it withdraws. It also has probably the least, has less consumptive use than a wet cooling tower. Wet cooling tower basically cools entirely evaporatively, so it drives off more of that water compared to once-through cooling. This has the largest impact to the aquatic biota by at least a factor of 10 in terms of critters that are drawn in. It is the most efficient for any amount of fuel that you put in. For a simple cycle plant, you're going to get more, on that steam turbine side, you're going to get more energy out for the same quantity of fuel. It also has the fewest air emissions of the three technologies to cool a steam electric plant. And it has the lowest capital and operating costs because it's just one cooling system. This is an example of a one-screw cooling system. There's a large intake bay here and a discharge here. No big structures. Wet cooling towers draw only about 5 to 10% of the cooling water that a one-screw cooling plant does. It has much less impact to the aquatic biota. It is a larger consumptive use, as I mentioned. It can also use purple pipe water, and there's a plant in the planning stages in south of Miami that's 2,200 megawatts, and it will use all purple pipe water from the city of Miami to provide cooling in its cooling towers. And the other thing that the cooling towers can do is, if there's still nitrogen when the power plant or organics in that wastewater, it can actually strip that. Of course, it's stripping it to atmosphere, so you're going to create another source of pollution, but it doesn't require the same level of purification as you would for a drinking water source. The wet cooling tower is less energy efficient than the one-screw cooling. It produces more air emissions in two ways. One side it uses more fuel to make the same amount of electricity, and then the cooling tower also puts emissions into the air. It puts particulates in the air from the dissolved solids that are in that water that's used for the cooling. And it can also, like I said, put in nitrogen or organics as it strips those from whatever is in the source of water that you use for this. It has very large capital costs, on the order of $100,000 to $200,000 in capital cost per megawatt of installed capacity. Here's an example of a plant. This is a 1,600 megawatt coal-fired plant. Those two natural draft cooling towers were commissioned last year. Those 4 units, 2 of the units were built in the 1950s. One of the units was a 400 megawatt coal unit, was built in the late 60s, and the newest unit is a 1972 vintage oil and coal-fired plant. This company spent $400,000 per megawatt to install those 2 cooling towers on a very, very old site. Dry cooling requires no water for cooling. It still has a steam turbine, but it's cooled by air, either by condensing the steam from just fans in the air, and it can be sited far from available water sources. It's less energy efficient in terms of megawatt per fuel. It needs more fuel, especially on a warm, dry day. When the air temperatures go up, it's much harder. You got to push more fans in to condense that steam. It has the most air emissions per megawatt on the fuel side, but it has no air emissions as a wet cooling tower would produce. It has very high capital costs. For the cooling system alone, it's well over $300,000 per megawatt electric of the steam turbine cycle that you produce. In conclusion, steam electric energy production efficiency is directly related to water use. The more water available to cool your condenser, the more efficiently and the less capital cost you're going to have for that steam electric generating plant. Steam electric energy is capital and operating cost. The cost of steam electric is inversely related to the water use. So not only is efficiency different, but your actual cost to the ratepayer or to the point of delivery. And I think the whole point is that depending on where you are and what's available for water, whether it's purple pipe water or it's storm water or whatever your source of water is for cooling a steam electric plant, you have to consider it wisely. If you're in an area where there's abundant water and you're not going to have impact to the local biota, once-through cooling, even though it's not the policy in California, it is one of the more efficient ways and one of the ways you can reduce your air emissions. So the main thing, the point I'm trying to make is there's a direct connection between water and energy production. And you'll always see it, you'll always have it, And you'll always need these kind of sites that have either combined cycle or simple cycle steam electrics. And you ought to think wisely about how and where you get the water for these facilities. Thank you.
Great. That was exactly what I was hoping for. We had a great introduction to the groundbreaking research that California has put forward to really prove out this concept of water and energy. Fran gave us a great example of how the government's really working hard to make sure, and regulatory bodies are trying to make sure they're working together to deliver these solutions. And I loved the primer on, infrastructure implications and examples of how these really are directly connected. Just real quick, on my end, sort of, what I do today is I think about water and power all the time, and I'm actually responsible for two things. One is commercializing a water technology, and one is commercializing a power technology. And what's so interesting is we know that while California is a great example of these issues, we all know that water and power are truly global issues. And I work for an inventor named Dean Kamen, and these two technologies have been a big passion of his, not to solve California's problems, but instead to solve the water and power problems of the developing world. And there, it's pretty, the water issue, water scarcity and contamination issue in these remote regions is pretty obvious. But once you get there and start thinking about how to solve those problems, it always comes back to the need for electricity. So what I am supposed to do is figure out how to commercialize these. I need to figure out if there's a way to make these technologies relevant for here so that we can ramp up production and bring the cost down so that we can take them over there somehow. So that was, I thought, going to be a very difficult thing, but pretty soon you figure out that these are actually quite relevant technologies for the issues we face today. And so these are actually very distributed. This is a different approach to infrastructure where instead you're trying to think about local sourcing and use of water and local sourcing of use of power. So you say, crazy, why do we need that? We have great infrastructure in the United States. Well, I can say two things for you. One is Hurricane Sandy, and two is the Super Bowl. No, just kidding. Anyway, I don't know if anyone saw that last night. But so as we can see, power supply issues are becoming a bigger deal with our existing infrastructure, and water supply too. And it really all clicked when I realized that these technologies that were designed to leapfrog places without infrastructure, they can actually be quite leapfrog the places here with infrastructure. So just what's neat is to think the whole solution set, or to keep expanding our minds of how we can be outside of the box to challenge these issues, is to think, we have great large centralized infrastructure such as the any sort of generation plant we have, or any sort of large reservoir or huge water conveyance systems that bring livelihood to millions of Americans. I mean, we can also start attacking it from the other side, from distributed solutions for harvesting locally available fuels. So that's where rooftop solar has really made a big effort. We can leverage the natural gas distribution in the United States for small generators. With a little water purification device, you can actually start really bringing water recycling closer to home, and not having to worry about big policy fights about building huge water recycling plants, which Orange County was able to do and LA wasn't. Instead, you could just do it at your own home. So it's up to you. So anyway, it's just from a technology and the kind of innovation side, it's a really exciting space too. Obviously, these are my examples, but there's so much going on. And it's great to also see from all different aspects, policy, regulatory, infrastructure, operations. Everyone has to consider this issue. So I think it was a great showcase today. I think it's ready to open it up for questions. If anyone, I'm
going to have to leave. So I'm just very anxious to respond to some of this. Another thing to think about is in California, our infrastructure, and it goes right to your point and to yours as well, our infrastructure is quite old because of the competition that was stimulated in, I think, the 80s. And the failure of that energy competition, we we got kind of stuck in a rut, and so a lot of our big power generators are very, very old, particularly those that are on the coast. And so those are going to be replaced. Now, we've got sea level rise coming up, and we've got renewables coming in. And so it is a perfect opportunity regionally to rethink how we actually are going to move into the next phase of energy and water. And so I think one of the things that was not mentioned about dry cooling, while all the points that were made were absolutely right, but dry cooling can also charge up and down in 10 minutes. That's about the window that ISO gives to folks to get power to substitute for, say, a renewable. That's about the amount of time that they allow, in 10-minute increments. And so, if you are selling, if you're a purveyor and you're selling just a little bit of power to get through a cloudy day or through a cloudy hour, you can zoom your system up and then zoom it down and basically save money and not be as energy inefficient as the numbers would suggest. You're not going to be running a lot of these plants 24/7. So I just want to make sure that you are thinking about that, and more technology, better technology, distributed technology, I think is the way to go. So thank you for what you're doing.
Questions?
And I think there's opportunities to do both, depending on where you are in California, what the resources are, the water resources, and what the energy demand is. And so I would say both for retrofitting old plants, which I'm pretty sure that the Water Board doesn't really want to see a lot of retrofitting. I think they probably would like to see people retrofit wet cooling towers or dry cooling towers if it was possible. But these older machines, they would need some major changes to the back end of the steam turbine in order to be able to do that. And so you're not just costing $400,000 per megawatt electric. You're going to also have to change the steam turbine to do that if you're trying to retrofit.
Yeah, go ahead.
I actually have a question for you. So the technology that you introduced, that's like a desalination project?
Yeah, so on the left-hand side, it's a small water purification system. So it actually mimics nature to clean water. It's a vapor compression distillation.
So I can put ocean water in there and be able to drink it?
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah. And my favorite type of, you can put gray water in there and drink it too.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then on the right-hand side is a micro CHP technology that can provide flexible generation while also providing high-quality heat that you can use too.
Okay.
Any other questions? Yeah.
I wanted to ask a little bit about the energy. You're kind of focused on energy intensity within water and wastewater operation, and whether kind of beyond identifying the intensity, you guys went in and looked at aligning kind of planning and decision making. You've got a series of public investments around, electric utilities and essentially the determinant of energy efficiency, and a pretty public process that that's kind of regulated of capital planning around facility operations. It seems like there's a significant opportunity in the alignment of the planning and decision making and budgeting processes that would be both good for the guys buying energy efficiency because they can find it quickly and access it and build their pipeline, and good for the water utilities. And then further, if you have thought about it, I'm interested in whether you were focused on it as kind of a more mandatory, okay, you guys get money that flows through through the Clean Water Act of the state, the locals were going to require a high level of energy performance, or a more incentive based, you're more energy efficient to get to the front of the line and planning out your capital spend for your plant.
We actually haven't gone that far. In the study that was done on behalf of the PUC, just identified the various regions and the energy intensity in those regions, but it didn't take it another step forward, I don't believe. I think what we want is what you're saying is going forward, we'd like to identify these things and have some sort of incentive or encouragement to do that.
Yeah, we've been trying to do, we run the energy program for the state of Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
We've been trying to accomplish the same thing, working with our Public Service Commission. And it's interesting how they both kind of embrace ideas around conservation and both how splintered the two programs.
Yeah, on the water side, our conservation programs are very good, and on the energy side, our energy efficiency programs are really good. And I think that's why we're pushing for, just because in California there are so many various water boards and water agencies, and the CPUC only oversees the smaller water utilities. So in order for us to do anything, we need everyone to be at the table.
So I've been getting a lot of signals I'm making you all late for lunch. But I just want to thank the panelists again, and obviously we'll all be here to continue the conversations. So thank you.